Good morning, Brian. And how are you this morning?
I'm doing so good. I got to see the Cybertruck in person, climb inside it this weekend. It was a whole lot of fun.
And did you like it?
No, I'm just kidding. No, it was wonderful, of course. I've seen it in person a number of times. I finally had an opportunity to physically touch one not that long ago. And I'd seen videos and pictures from the inside. So I had a pretty good idea what to expect. It's a Tesla. It's a Tesla. It was great. Yeah, got to see how it feels, how it fits. It's great.
Nice. All right. So, well, I'm glad it was good for you. So, listen, I've got this situation going on here right now. I'm thinking about the big picture, because Elon said this morning in response to Tesla economics or Tesla economics. How do you even pronounce that? Anyway, Elon says it will be very hard to climb to 10 times output, meaning 20 million units a year. He says it's doable, but it will take an immense amount of work. So my first thought when I read that this morning was, well, yeah, I always thought it would be an immense amount of work, but still doable. That's kind of, it's been a lot of people think there's like no chance in the world, but Elon is still saying it's within the range of possibility. What do you think?
So the first thing to ask is how big is the task? The answer is it is very, very big. It's never been done before. So right there, it would be 2x the greatest production year of any company ever. Now, what I like to look at is, I think Toyota is going to be bigger in 2030. They're not. There is a 0% chance because they're not planning on that kind of growth. If they suddenly had a huge amount of demand, they could not ramp quickly enough to reach 20 million. Whereas with Tesla, there is a non-zero chance. That already puts them at an advantage. But we can go through it by products and by places and look at what's actually going on and get an even better picture. And I bet that's what you're going to make me do.
Well, yes, maybe we might get to that. What I wanted to start with was that there was this other thing out this morning, Sawyer Merritt reporting on it. He says just over 10,000 of the cars used by Uber and Lyft in New York City are now electric. That's 12% of the total fleet for the two ride-hailing companies. It means that the drive transition in both fleets is actually happening faster than expected. So this could give us an indication of some directionality. Everybody's talking about the BEV revolution is over, blah, blah, blah. Not everybody, but many in the mainstream media. But the evidence would be that if Uber and Lyft are buying these, they must be more of the Uber and Lyft drivers. They're recognizing the practical advantage. They're recognizing the cost advantage. They're recognizing that they have less downtime, et cetera. So how do you think that would play in? That idea that Uber and Lyft are now at 12% would play into the idea that Tesla could be at 20 million by 2030.
So there are some great numbers here. The first one that I thought was fascinating, and it came out pretty late yesterday. Omar from Whole Mars Catalog showed that global adoption in January was up something like 60-70% from a year ago. So this story that the EV adoption craze has reached its end is unfounded and incorrect and largely pushed by fossil fuel companies. I've got a video that came out earlier today or yesterday, depending when this runs, about this terrible article in Yahoo explaining why Toyota's on the right path to electrification, also known as sticking with hybrids and fantasy tech that doesn't exist and probably never will. And then you get all the way through it. And then the big reveal at the end of the video is, oh, by the way, this video was published and edited by oilprice.com. There it is. Found it. Mystery solved. You've seen the profits out of the oil companies. They've got the money to spread bad news, even when it's completely dishonest, and they can afford to buy people to make it look credible, even when it isn't. The electric transition makes sense. Here's a perspective for the small Uber driver guy. You don't want to buy that car. It's going to depreciate too quickly. Yeah, sort of, because even though if you pay $50,000 for it now, And then the new one, when you go to replace it, is only 30,000. You're not going to get 30,000 out of your beaten up one. You're only going to get 20. You lost 30 grand. Did I? Because I'm buying a replacement for it that's now only 30 grand. You have to compare it over time, vehicle after vehicle, sequentially, and compare the numbers that way. If I can replace this one with one that's only 10,000 more than the one I'm getting rid of, I have won. And that same Prius, you've seen guys, airport shuttle type workers who bought a Prius and drove it 100, 200,000 miles before throwing it away, really. There is no value in a Prius that has already been Ubered. It has no more residual value. It has been driven to death. So would you rather pay 30,000 and get nothing out of it, or 50,000 and get 20? It's kind of equal. And along the way, you get a better car that's cheaper to operate and doesn't, it's just a better situation. And the numbers are starting to make sense for those drivers.
Right. And so that's one side of the coin. I've talked about fleets over and over and over again. I believe that's one of the missing components. And I know we've had a lot of the fleet companies who seem to have some kind of a problem with the math that you just provided us. Yes, there was a one-time loss last year in some of these fleets. Hertz and others talked about these one-time losses because they bought high and sold low. So whenever you do that, it's really a bad idea. Now, did they know they were buying high at the top of the boom bust situation in the automobile industry? No, they didn't know they were buying high at the time. They probably speculated that these prices would hold, as they have so many times in the past. When prices go up on cars, they stay up. But this was a very unique situation where we had supply chain problems and all kinds of things raising the price of the vehicles through the sky. And every vehicle, every new car, every used car, ICE or EV, came down over the course of the last 18 months. So it probably, the rest of their fleet, they didn't do that well on either. But the electric vehicles did go up a little more, and they came down, therefore, a little more. And it's a one-time deal, but they're going like, well, now we can't buy EVs anymore, except to your point, now they can buy the EV that they're replacing for $35,000.
Right, for 20,000 less than they paid. Anyone should have been able to tell them that that was the high point. Normally, the way the rental car fleets work, and it's a brilliant setup they've got going, is they buy cars at a very low wholesale price. Basically, they go to the car companies and say, what do you got too many of? That's why the Pontiac Aztek was such a popular rental car and not a purchase car, is because Pontiac couldn't move them. We'll give you a heck of a deal, just get them out the door. They'll drive them. Historically, they would drive them for 30,000 miles, year or two, and then sell them at their own private lots for Blue Book. There were no deals to be had. You weren't getting a good deal. You were getting Blue Book. It is a newish car. It still has factory warranty, and, take it or leave it. And a lot of people would take, so they would actually sell the car for about what they paid for it, if not more than they paid. They got a free car to rent out for 2 years. With the crunch, they had to renegotiate all those contracts. They were not getting fleet cars at fleet prices, really, because why would GM or Ford or whomever go out and sell them a car for 20, 30% off book when they can just send them to the dealers who are desperately hungry for more inventory? Anything they bought at the height of the crunch, they are definitely upside down on. And if they wish to scale back their EV ambitions, they can do that, but they will lose customers. There are people like me who only went to Hertz because they have Teslas. If you no longer have them, that's fine. I'll just go back to Turo. I don't mind at all.
Right. So overall, I've been talking about the fleet business. I've been talking about the police kinds of fleets, the government, all kinds of government fleets, and et cetera, et cetera. So let's take it on to the next level. Let's just talk about the gross auto, where we started the conversation with Elon saying we could still get to 20 million. we need to put it in the context of what Autoline's John McElroy said this morning, or maybe it was yesterday. He's got a video out. He says, we're at peak. We've already passed peak auto. Totally. We're currently stuck at the current levels. We have, we've dropped down in the United States from about 18 million, some years even 20 million. We've dropped down to the 16 million range, 16.5. Some years a little up, some years a little down, but a couple of million less than what we were doing even a decade ago. And that's also true worldwide. We're down considerably worldwide. I have to admit that I saw this coming. And again, maybe it's because of my experience in the bicycle world, which has also seen an overall drop in total vehicle sales. I saw it coming because why? Because the cars were lasting longer. And that's exactly what he says in this particular video, is that they're lasting longer. And what happened is they're lasting longer. The auto companies found they needed to sell a more expensive vehicle, just like you're seeing in the housing market right now. Only the expensive homes are selling because they can only sell so many. They're putting all their money into the high end where they make more margin. And that's happening in housing and in automotive. So we have an overall reduction. He's saying we'll never get back to those 18 to 20 million years. And how does that impact Tesla? One last thought before you respond. I did see an article yesterday, or I should have brought it along here and shown it, but it was a chart that showed General Motors, Ford, Stellantis basically going downhill in total sales over the last couple of years, and Tesla going uphill in the next few years. Yeah.
I did see that. That might have been James Stevenson, but he did. I think he showed that one too. If you go back even 15, 20 years, you could find that a used $35,000 car with 70, 80, 90,000 miles was like $3,000, maybe $5,000 if you got a bad deal. I always bought that car. I always bought the car. I bought a Chevy Venture that had, I don't know, 70, 80,000 miles on it. It was a $35,000 van. I bought it 5 years old with decent miles for, I want to say, $3,750. Today, that 70,000 mile vehicle should have more life left in it than my Chevy Venture did. And of course, it's going to cost 10, 12, 15,000 because it is a better car. It does have more miles left in it. Well, yeah, but you could argue people will still want to upgrade and update. Yes, but there are a lot of people who will not do that until their vehicle is in the ground. And that's what I did with my Chevy Venture and the Pontiac Montana I replaced it with. I drove them to death because they were so cheap and had no resale value. I mean, if I traded it in, when I went to trade in my Pontiac Montana, they offered me, I think, $200.
Yeah, right.
And which is below crushing weight. And I was like, boy, you guys really do not want my business. And yeah, so I would agree that is definitely a possibility. But at the same time, we're seeing the growth of the middle class around the world. Right. China's certainly still on an upward swing for buying vehicles. And I think India will be the next market to do that. But there are a lot of markets that are essentially untapped, but I don't know how much you can tap them at 50,000, at 60,000.
Yeah.
Those markets are going to want something a little more compelling, something like a $30,000 to $35,000 Model 3, or, I mean, heaven forbid, could you imagine if a compelling EV was made in the $25,000 range?
Amazing. Who could do that?
It's never been thought of, Andy.
So basically, I think Elon, my theory here would be that what we have is a demographic situation, and there's one car company leader that really loves demographics. He's talking about the downward slope in the population when nobody else was talking about it. He's talking about what that means in terms of the world's economy when nobody else is talking about it. Now other people are starting to say, oh, well, look at that. Elon's talking about population. You mean the population might be going down? Oh, no. These things, futuristic thinkers get a hold of this kind of stuff, and then they make plans around it. And I think that's what Elon is doing. So he knows about this population decrease. He knows that cars will last longer. EVs are going to last even longer than ICE cars. So they're going to last longer too. He knows that we're going to have this transition to automated cars. And one of the things that John McElroy talks about is the car companies are looking for other ways to make money on their cars. Oh, maybe Elon thought of that too, like having autonomous vehicles where he can charge by the month or charge a big amount for software as a service. Wow.
Crazy. And Ford just discovered this within the last month. Pro is where our money will come from in the future. All these add-on services, because if there's one thing businesses love, it's being nickeled and dimed by their car company. Of course, this is going to be, it's foolproof, Randy. And you know what happens when you make something foolproof? They just build better fools.
Well, John McElroy agrees in overall with what you just said. It has to be foolproof, and you can't offer them something that they can already get some other way. Just because you put it in an automobile doesn't make it great. So you do have to offer something that is going to be perfect for the automobile. Well, autonomous driving would be one of those things. And then little upgrades like the general, I don't even pay for it in my Model Y, the $10 a month thing. Yes, we could pay for that. We don't drive it enough to make it worth it, I guess. But a lot of people pay that $10 a month so that they can get the Bluetooth, and you pay the $10 a month. Well, $10 a month is $120 a year times 5 or 10 million vehicles. It starts to turn into real money.
But I use it for my Spotify and my YouTube when I'm showing the kids something. I get utility out of it. And just the ability to have Spotify alone is enough. And I could do it through my phone, but the data would end up costing $10 anyway. And then you've got extra steps, and why bother with that? So it is, and then you've got real-time traffic data for your maps,
Right.
And you've got satellite maps, which I enjoy looking at, so I can see what's around, know what I'm looking at. It's kind of fun. So that's, and that's not a big profit center. I don't know what they pay for that data connection, but at $10, there's not a lot of room for margin.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that they're doing okay on that one. And so the last thing that John McElroy says is that companies are working to slash costs. I don't know who's looking to slash costs.
Got to be some new idea I've never heard of.
And he points to the unboxed as one of the ideas, one of the thoughts that's coming. And of course, if you're slashing costs, what are you doing to your competitors? You're forcing your competitors to either find ways to keep up with you or go out of business. And who would have thought? But we have all these people that are screaming and yelling that Elon's dropping his prices and how can he do that? And it's affecting margins and whatnot. But the long-term plan, the long-term planner, knowing that the overall business is dropping, that the potential for slashing costs is there, looking for ways to do that, offering additional SaaS services and whatnot in order to increase the total amount of money you're getting on the car long term. I don't know. It seems like somebody's thinking long term here.
If you've got a profit margin and you wish to move more units, you have that flexibility. A lot of manufacturers don't. And a lot of manufacturers, you may have seen Ford just drop the price of the Mach-E in Canada by 13 eye-watering $1,000. They have got to be deeply upside down on it, but they understand they need to stay in the market. They can work on improving their cost of goods sold. They can work on improving efficiency, getting better and cheaper batteries. But in the meantime, you can't just give up on the market entirely if you expect to move any units. And that's kind of where they're at. A lot of companies need to get serious. And they believed it. They had this myth that once we flip the switch, we're going to have a better car that's cheaper and more reliable and more efficient. Guys, it's hard. Building these cars, designing them is really hard. And they're just waking up to that now and finding that the cars that they've been benchmarking, the Model 3 from 2017, the Model Y from 2020, Guys, that's old tech. We are past that. We are so past that. And if that's what you're hoping to release this year, you're going to be releasing a car that's not even a Tesla killer, circa whatever you benchmarked. It's going to be hopefully about as good as a car that's now 4 years old,
Yeah, exactly.
a design that's that old.
Well, Brian, I think we've proven our case. We've proven that Elon's right. 20 million is possible. It's only going to come from one company. Maybe he makes it, maybe he doesn't. If he only hits 18 million, I will not be sad.
If it's only the biggest car company in the world, and I still think BYD could be bigger over
Units.
over the longer unit wise over the longer term. But if Tesla can produce and sell more cars than 10 million, they've got a cemented place in history, first round Hall of Fame, no question about it.
All right. Well, Brian, as always, I want to thank you for being on board. I did have this video yesterday that everybody seemed to love, but nobody actually gave it love by watching it. I'm just going to recommend that people go back and check it out. It was yesterday morning, and I talked about the 4 different kinds of traders. You know, the day trader, the short
Benedict Arnold, yep.
the medium turner.
Oh, traders.
Traders.
Right.
Not
Right,
traders. Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
I'm sorry. So the day trader, the short-term trader, the medium-term trader, and the buy and hold and keep it for 10 years trader. And I proved that all 4 of those, they should be buying Tesla. There's no better stock for all 4 kinds of traders. So I'm going to put the card up for that one right here.
Works for me.
Okay. Thanks, Brian, as always, for joining me. And I'm sure we'll do it again.
I think so.
All right. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.